Hi, once again, it's Paul Scheele for Self-Healing. And in this session, we're going to be talking about the use of a paraliminal called active listening. Well, isn't that about interpersonal communications? Yes, it is. However, active listening can also be applied to listening to what's going on within. You see, in order for us to really hear, we have to be able to listen most effectively, and that requires that we're being present. For example, if you've had someone talk to you while you're busy doing something else, like looking at a phone or texting or composing a message or something, they finish and they ask you a question, you didn't really hear what it is. You knew they were talking, but because you weren't listening, you didn't really process what was going on. Now, when we are not well, generally we know it because there's some kind of symptom. And a symptom is essentially a flag. It's a communication device. The human body is trying to get our attention. And the way it does it is by bringing our awareness to a place within us. Now, what's very interesting about that is once you get what the message is, the signal is no longer necessary. I remember watching a person who was an expert in pain management, and he demonstrated this. A person came up front who had a very bad shoulder. It was always giving him a dull, achy pain. And the person who was leading the class went over and pulled the stretch receptors on the opposite shoulder. Guess what? Pain went away. Now, the way in which he explained that is that the human mind is what's generating the experience of pain, not the shoulder. The shoulder was injured, and at that time, a pain signal was created in order to have you protect that area. Don't use it anymore. Let it heal. Once the healing is taken place, the signal is no longer necessary, but sometimes those pathways are continuing to fire off. Give you an example. I worked with a person who was an amputee, and he had something called phantom limb syndrome. His leg was amputated below the knee, and what his mind was playing was that his foot was in excruciating pain. If he closed his eyes, he could visualize lower part of his leg and his foot, like if someone had just whacked it with a hammer, or it had been in a freezing bath of water. So there is a phenomenon where the nerve, what's called a neuroma growth, has occurred, but essentially the pain can't be in the foot. It's the brain sending information to the foot, receiving information back, and placing that pain experience there. So really what we want to do with our active listening is we want to do two things. Number one is to acknowledge what's going on right now. In other words, take a look at the signal. There's a red flag flapping in the wind. Notice the signal. Now, explore. What's the signal trying to give you? What's the message it's trying to give you? And if you receive that message, then you can ask that part of you, would you be willing to reduce that sensation now, reduce the symptom? And whatever helps you reduce it, That's acknowledging what works. So, or excuse me, that's appreciating what works. And one thing that we absolutely know about active listening with another person is that we appreciate them and we're making that person the most important person to us in that moment. We're giving our full and active attention to what a person is communicating. The same is true when we're healing our bodies or our emotions or our mind, whatever it might be. But active healing means active attending to what's going on. Acknowledge what it is and appreciate what works to lower the signal. Now, some people will say, on a scale of 1 to 10, my pain level is 9 or 8, where you can almost not think of anything else. And they want to eliminate the pain. The truth is, what we want to have is any experience of pain between 4 and 7. In other words, 1, 2, 3, it's not really that big of a deal. Above 7, that's a big deal. So between 4 and 7, you're dealing with it. You're in the healing mode. If it gets too high, you need to lower it. If it's down around 4, that's great. But to say never have that signal, eliminate it completely, not particularly helpful, because we want to have the sensation, we want to have the symptoms signal us when it's necessary, but then ameliorate the symptom, let it go when it's no longer needed. I had a friend who understood hypnosis, and he used a technique when he had a toothache to make the toothache go away. So he eliminated the sensation completely. A couple of years later, he went into the dentist because he noticed that there was kind of a foul odor coming from his mouth. And the doctor said, "Oh my goodness, does this not hurt?" And he tapped on a tooth. No, not at all. So it was totally abscessed. It was a terrible infection in there. Well, the signal was trying to tell him to take care of that years ago. He never did. You get the idea? So it's okay to have a signal. You just don't want it to be at such a level that it's getting in the way of your normal functioning or preventing you from an adequate healing of that. So our healing prognosis is going to be enhanced when we can pay exquisite attention and really discern what it is that I can do about it. Now, there have been some cases, kind of call them syndromes sometimes, but they're cases of things like chronic fatigue or autoimmune diseases where things are going wrong. We don't really have any single point source that is causing. It's a number of things. Oftentimes it's lifestyle related. The very first case of Lyme's disease was a situation where a woman was told that she's going crazy because they couldn't find anything wrong with her. She knew the symptoms. She had them in any test that they did. They couldn't find it. They didn't have a test to be able to understand what it was. Now that they know what Lyme's disease is, there's all kinds of presenting symptom groups, and those differ from person to person. How it affects one person is different than how it affects another. The most important thing is when a symptom is up, we use that opportunity to then move in and do additional deep healing. If you're not getting clarity, the active listening paraliminal can really help. Now, dreams are also interesting places where signals will come. If you're in a dream and you're in something like a boat or an airplane or a vehicle like a car or a bus or a train, generally these are body signals. These are body signals. I remember having a dream one time where I was in this big old car from Detroit, just absolutely giant. Lots of steel, really wide, really long, regular size interior, but it was just ridiculous size. I was going down a street that ended up being a dead end. I had to back up and get out. Well, moving around, I had to go up over a curve. I woke up from it. I thought, what's going on? Yeah, I was way overweight. And I began a program for losing that weight. I went from 181 pounds to 154. That was actually too far. The ideal is about 159, 160 for me. But that was my mind in a dream state, giving me a body image that when I'm trying to get to my teaching engagement and I'm driving this big car trying to get there, I was having all kinds of problems. I remember I needed to buy an overcoat on a trip, stopped at Nordstrom's on the way to the airport. And oh my goodness, yeah, realized that my clothes did not fit. Bought another pair of pants. It was the largest pair of pants I'd ever bought. And sometimes the dreams can help us, if we can listen to it, can help guide us in the next step that needs to be taken. Remember, whatever goal you have, your non-conscious mind is always trying to find the best ways and means to get you there. And if it's communicating with you, you have to listen. Be present and attentive, and you'll get the message, and your healing can take place. Well, that's it for now. Thanks so much. Hope to see you again soon.